Okay. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Susie Llewellyn, and I have the privilege of introducing our special guest speaker tonight, Dr. Doug Odom. And I was just thinking, what could be more important than learning how to improve outcomes regarding fertility, healthy pregnancy, and healthier moms and babies? And tonight we are very fortunate to learn from a doctor who personifies kindness. He's known for his compassion. He has decades of experience as an OBGYN, and he's remained a lifelong learner. He has taken his message around the world and lectured in Japan, China, Europe, New Zealand, and Canada. Dr. Odom has addressed audiences at Yale University, Stanford University, the Mayo Clinic, and Baylor Medical Center. And this evening, we get to be enlightened right from our own homes. Dr. Doug Odom has delivered 17,000 babies between the years of 1965 and 2002. That's 37 years of delivering babies. So if you do the math on that, that's an average of 460 new lives that he brought into the world every year for 37 years. Dr. Odom retired from his private OBGYN practice in 2015. Dr. Doug is a lifelong Mississippian. He enjoys active outdoor sports. He is married. He's a father of 5 sons who we still don't know, do they play basketball or not? Because their dad sure did. And he went to USM on a basketball academic scholarship. And he also has 6 beloved grandchildren. He has a passion for teaching and coaching, and I know that you will feel his passion for teaching tonight. And Maya Angelou once said, "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." Tonight, I have no doubt Dr. Odom will give you feelings of being more empowered and knowledgeable. I know many of you will leave this event feeling hopeful and heard, and so grateful that you attended. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Dr. Doug Odom. Here's your round of applause.
Thank you. Are we working? Is everybody, can you see my screen now? Good, thank you. Well, thank you so much, Susie. That was a great introduction. Thank you, Jake, for the technical support. And thank all of you for being on this call, being on this Zoom, I'm sorry. So this is my experience, and this is certainly my pleasure to be with you here tonight. And I'm just going to jump right in, if I can. All right, I'll do this. So in a perfect world, and thank you for the topics of infertility, pregnancy, and all things that are associated with this. And I will try to leave enough time and room at the end of this to answer your specific questions. There are 2 or 3 areas I'm going to skip, but if you want me to, I'll come back and talk about them. But in a perfect world, in Mississippi, we would love to see patients before conception. Over half pregnancies are unplanned or unintended. And in Mississippi, it's much higher than 50%. So, but in pre-pregnancy counseling, we go over lots of things, but you'll see that I have nutrition that is highlighted. And so what is it that we should be eating? This is what is recommended today for optimal health, and this certainly applies for pregnant moms. So half the plate should be fruits and vegetables. 1/4 of the plate should be grains, whole grains. 1/4 of the plate should be protein, and that protein, half of that protein, or that 1/4, 1/8 actually, should be plant protein. And you'll see up here, I'm trying to find a visual that shows water instead of dairy, because dairy is not your beverage of choice. So substitute water, and that's what we all should be eating. So nutrition is the cornerstone of health, and the cornerstone or the foundation of nutrition is a diet that is rich in fruits and vegetables. So we talk about macronutrients, large components, and micronutrients, and we're going to really talk more about micronutrients tonight. And most pregnant moms, or most potential pregnant moms, have a significant deficiency before they ever conceive. So they don't have depletions, they don't have scurvy or beriberi, but they have a lack of adequate micronutrients. And these micronutrients are also called antioxidants. They're also called phytochemicals or phytonutrients. So they're primarily plant-based nutrients. So for a pregnant mother, we've for years given them prenatal vitamins. So why not just vitamins? Well, vitamins aren't the answer. We know that. They're limited. They're only 13. They're man-made in a factory, most of them overseas. They're artificial. It's not recognized by the body. There's possible toxicity with vitamins. And today in 2021, there's only one medical area that endorses prenatal vitamins at all, and that's obstetrics. But the research shows that that's not nearly enough. In fact, this is from the New England Journal of Medicine, and this was a group of a large number that were evaluated for adding vitamin C and vitamin E to see if they could reduce pregnancy complications. And the bottom line was they were not able to reduce the incidence of preeclampsia, intrauterine growth retardation, or any serious outcomes for the infants. So this was New England Journal. The exact same thing was done in Lancet, and this was in 2006. And these are two of the more prestigious periodicals in medicine, and they came out 3 weeks apart with the exact same conclusion. So what is the answer? The answer is whole food. And I had a lot of patients. I would talk to them about nutrition, and somehow or another, I don't know where they got this, not from me, but they would come to me and say, "You'd be so proud of me, doctor, because I learned how to read the labels." And I said, "Well, that's good, but you really need to eat food that doesn't even require a label." So whole food, when you buy an apple or an orange, or you buy a tomato, it's not broken down exactly what's in it. You know what's in it. You know it's good for you, and you know it's full of phytochemicals and phytonutrients that are so important for us. So this is an article, or this is a Newsweek, and this was in the 1990s. I've forgotten exactly the year, but part of this says, "Can phytochemicals prevent cancer?" And then they said, this was another article, "The Truth About Antioxidants." So it's been shown that phytochemicals can prevent cancer, and antioxidants are plentiful if we just consume them. But we're not doing that because we eat not for health and wellness, but we eat for taste and pleasure. That's what we do in this country, and especially in Mississippi. So here's another depiction. This was in 1991. This was a number of phytonutrients that this author determined, of 12,400. And if you look at this is an iceberg, and the majority is below the water. And so this is really the real nutritional value. And what do these phytonutrients do? Hang on one second, because I can't see that. Anyway, over here on this side, micronutrients, or these phytonutrients, offer protection. And over here on this other side, it says performance. And up here, these macronutrients, carbs, proteins, and fats, are used to create energy for performance. So we can't do one without the other. We need both, but real nutrition is phytonutrition, plant nutrition. So This is only 10 years later. This is, I can't see the date on there, but I can tell you it's 2001. And now these phytonutrients are numbering, they double the number in 10 years of phytonutrients. Most of these are identified only by structure. They don't have names. There are a few, in fact, here are the named ingredients in an apple. There's between 400 and 500 named ingredients, but they determine they're like 13 or 14,000. So again, these are all important. They are so important that they are responsible for the taste and color and smell in these foods. Most of them function as antioxidants. And what do antioxidants do? They actually donate electrons to neutralize free radicals. These are oxygen-free radical compounds that are imbalanced or unbalanced. They typically have one electron in the outer orbit, and because of that, they're dangerous, they're harmful. So we want to neutralize free radicals. And the way to do that is to eat a diet that's full of plant food, and especially fruits and vegetables and berries. So this oxidative stress is where you have too many free radicals that are not being neutralized, and they contribute to chronic inflammation. So what phytonutrients do is they reduce chronic inflammation, and chronic inflammation is the common denominator for all chronic disease: cancer, stroke, heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune, arthritis. They're all associated with a lifetime of inflammation. So these phytonutrients are so good, they can save your life, and they function because they work in synergy. One is doing one thing, it's donating an electron, and then another one is doing that. And this goes on 24/7, and you're not aware of it, but it's happening in all of the cells in your body. And there are over 10 trillion of these human cells. We'll talk about that more in a minute. So when you hear the word antioxidant or phytonutrient, phytochemical, micronutrient, when you hear that, think one thing: protection. Protection. It protects you against the sun's rays. It protects you against these free radicals. If you get close to somebody with secondhand smoke, um, so you can't consume enough antioxidants. Just know that you can't consume enough phytonutrients, plant compounds. So in pregnancy, there's an additional state of this chronic inflammation or oxidative stress that's caused by increased mitochondrial activity in the placenta and in the growing fetus. And this is tissue replication. So in a pregnancy, there's a very accelerated incidence of oxidative stress, the same as you get in somebody that has cancer. There's rapid tissue replication. So as a sidebar, you get these free radicals. Too many of them is called oxidative stress. So when you're pregnant, you have the same thing. So without antioxidant protection, this heightens the stress that leads to IUGR, intrauterine growth restriction or retardation, gestational diabetes, pregnancy-induced hypertension, also called toxemia, even prematurity. All of these are directly related to too much oxidative stress. So here's some work that was done at the Cleveland Clinic in the 1990s. And they measured in the amniotic fluid free radicals as reactive oxygen species. And they also measured antioxidants as total antioxidant capacity. And when there was a predominance of free radicals, and this is from 0 weeks, this is right on up through 40 weeks as a full-term pregnancy. So you can see if there were more free radicals than there were antioxidants to neutralize the potential injury. Those patients typically had poor outcomes. They were at much added risk of delivering early, of having gestational diabetes, but especially toxemia or delivering earlier than 37 weeks, which is prematurity. So this is what we see a lot in Mississippi, but this is what we would rather see. And it's where we have more of this total antioxidant capacity as opposed to these free radicals or oxygen species. So, but what are the dangers of a baby coming early? And the definition of prematurity is delivery before 37 weeks. Well, this slide is a little bit dated, but there are actually over 600,000 babies that are born now prematurely, and that's about 1 in every 8 baby, or 1 in every 8 deliveries, except in Mississippi, and it's closer to 15–16%. And there are other southern states where it's much higher than 12%. But you get the idea here. This is preventable. We know that. And especially these babies that are born very, very prematurely, we have infant mortality that's on the rise. And it's because these babies are just born too early. So again, we can do something about that. And all of these pregnancy complications are directly related to 2 things. And one is suboptimal nutrition, which contributes to excessive chronic inflammation. Those 2 things just seem to go together. It's really sad, but that's what's happening. So the current recommendations during pregnancy call for a minimal of 15 servings. A serving is a half a cup. So we're looking at a minimum of 7.5 cups of plant food, specifically fruits, vegetables, berries, but also nuts, seeds, beans, legumes. And it's because these foods are nutritionally dense and fiber dense. Nutrition is so important, but fiber is as well. And the nutrition is found in these antioxidants that are trapped inside of the fiber. So do you think fiber is good for us? Sure it is. And then when I ask people, well, why? Almost everybody says it helps you go to the bathroom, it helps you be regular, and it does. But literally the antioxidants, the phytonutrients, are trapped inside the fiber. And so when we chew that apple, we're tearing those fibers and we're releasing all of these phytonutrient antioxidants so that we can then get them in our bloodstream, and they go all over the body. They're donating electrons and they're reducing chronic inflammation. But this is also what we know, that if a patient has toxemia of pregnancy, that's also called pregnancy-induced hypertension. But if they have that, they are much more likely to develop adult hypertension within a decade. And the risk is 60, 70, 80% unless they make changes, unless they quit smoking, and unless they change what they're eating, they change their dietary intake. The same thing when somebody has gestational diabetes, they're much more likely to develop, we used to call it adult onset, but now we're seeing it in teenagers. So it's type 2 diabetes. And so when a patient has gestational diabetes, within a decade, she's very likely to develop overt diabetes, but also cardiovascular disease. When a mom delivers before 37 weeks, there's a direct correlation to ischemic heart disease. With any pregnancy loss, we see a significant increase in all chronic diseases. So it's a shame that we're not seeing what we can do to literally prevent this, and that's to change our diet, is to change what we're eating. So speaking of what we're eating, I'm going to jump to another area of gut health. And this is maybe more than you want. And if it is, raise your hand and I'll just move on to something else. But gut health, we know today, determines your health probably more than any other single factor. What's going on in your intestinal tract, your digestive system, your gastrointestinal system. So we have over 10 trillion human cells. We have over 100 trillion bacteria. So we have more bacteria times 10 than we have human cells, and most of them reside in your digestive system. Most of them, in fact, are in your large intestine, also called your colon. So these bacteria belong to essentially one of two groups, beneficial or non-beneficial. And we've had the Human Genome Project completed, where all of the sequencing for all of the genes, and I'll talk about that in just a second, but this enteric microbiome is the genetic material from the bacteria. And these bacteria weigh about 4 or 5 pounds. It's actually called an organ, just like your liver and your kidneys and your heart and your lungs. It's an organ. And this organ is inherited from your mother during delivery, and especially if the baby is born vaginally. If it's a cesarean section, it's a little bit different. So, but this enteric microbiome after the age of 4 or 5 years is affected by lifestyle choices. It's affected by your food choices, obviously, but it's also affected by whether you're a smoker or a non-smoker, whether you are involved in a relationship or a business or a workplace that's full of stress. It's affected by medications. These bacteria are definitely interrupted with antibiotics, but also with hormones, with antacids, and many over-the-counter non-prescriptive medicines. Your environment affects your enteric microbiome, whether it's summer or winter, whether it's pollution, whether you're drinking contaminated water. Chemicals are in the air, toxins are everywhere. They're in the soil, they're in the water. So your intestinal system is in perfect balance when you're in this condition called symbiosis. And symbiosis means that you have a bacterial balance favoring the beneficial bacteria. When it's favoring the non-beneficial bacteria, they're also called, that umbrella for these bacteria called Firmicutes, you have what's known as dysbiosis. And another word for dysbiosis is gut permeability, but it's also leaky gut. So you don't want to have a predominance of non-beneficial bacteria. It's the beneficial bacteria that are making so many different things that are so beneficial for us, including short chain fatty acids that literally protect the lining of the gut. So here's how simple all of this is, though. The diet for the non-beneficial bacteria are what we call the SAD diet. It's sugar and processed food and dairy and gluten and excess animal foods. But the diet for the beneficial bacteria is very uncomplicated as well. It's primarily phytonutrients, those antioxidant components, and where they're found, this prebiotic fiber. So we should be eating a minimum of 30 to 40 grams of fiber a day, if not much more than that. There are populations on the planet that consume a lot more than even 50 grams of fiber a day. And believe it or not, they don't have cardiovascular disease. They don't have cancer. They don't have autoimmune diseases. They don't have diabetes. They don't have the things that we die from in this country. So we should be feeding, this is key, we should be feeding the beneficial bacteria. And I used to say when a mom was pregnant, you know, you're eating for 2. Then if she had twins, now you're eating for 3. But we now say you should be eating for a 100 trillion, because the bacteria that we're feeding, that we choose to feed, literally determines your health. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about epigenes and epigenetics. And epigenes these are marks that affect genetic expression. This is where we have 46 chromosomes. We get 23 from each parent for a total of 46. And in those 46 chromosomes, we have 23,000, give or take, 23,000 genes. And these genes have been mapped. That was a Human Genome Project. It took well over a decade to determine that, but they sequenced them so that we know every gene and where it is on which chromosome. So, but when we have alterations or variations or abnormalities, they're called SNPs. So each of us have over 1 million of these SNPs, and some of these SNPs can be very problematic, but all of us have about 100, all of us have about 1 million of these SNPs, but most of them have little effect on our health. But when they become very abnormal, they can become mutations. And one of them is this MTHFR gene, and it's also called the methylation gene. And I'm gonna run through that just a tiny bit because this has to do with so many people that are pregnant, and now there's a big, oh, are you homozygous? Are you heterozygous? Did you get this from both parents or just from one parent? So, but methylation is so important because methylation is what allows us to have healthy DNA. And when we do have these SNPs, this methylation helps to protect us and to heal these SNPs. So, but this methylation process facilitates over 200 functions in the human body. This is a methyl group right here. And so these are required to protect, repair, and heal DNA. So the principal primary source for these methyl groups is in our leafy green vegetables. So if we're not eating these every day, make it a habit to try to eat a salad or try to add kale or spinach or some green food, especially the leafy greens, because that's literally where you get these methyl groups. And when you don't get them, you have poor detoxification. It's known that we all have too much toxicity in our body and we're trying to get rid of it. Know that the natural form of vitamin B9 is called folate, and the active form is called methylfolate. And that's exactly what you get when you're consuming leafy green vegetables. Now, folic acid is what we use for a long time in pregnant prenatal vitamins. But what we know today is that this is obviously synthetic. This is natural, but the synthetic form can be converted to methyl folate, but it's much better if we just consume methylfolate and rather than rely on just folate being changed into methylfolate. So this actually blocks folate receptors. So even if you do eat these green leafies and other fruits and vegetables and berries, the Mediterranean diet contributes a lot to methylfolate as well. So this is the heterozygous, the one copy from of the gene from either parent. Homozygous, you get them from both. And if you happen to be heterozygous for this particular C677T, if you're heterozygous, it's a 40% reduction in the function of this methylation. But if you're homozygous, you get it from both parents. Now there's a 70% reduction. It doesn't mean that you're not producing methylation, but there's a tremendous reduction. So I'm going to tell you in a minute how we get around that. And then there's the same thing with heterozygous for this one, and homozygous, there's a 40% and a 20% reduction. And if you get this one from one parent and this one from the other parent, It's called compound heterozygous. It's a 50% loss of function. You don't want to have any loss of function. So if you're consuming these methyl groups in your diet, then it makes up for all of this potential loss because you're not methylating only 30% or 40%. So the answer is your diet is key. And if you'll eat these foods, even if you have these genes, either heterozygous or homozygous, you won't even notice it. So that's the MTHFR gene. So, all right, I want to talk a little bit about nutrigenomics, and this is a role that nutrition plays in causing your genes to be turned on or turned off. That's called gene expression or gene activation. And Juice Plus has done a study of healthy middle age group, and it showed a 10% reduction in DNA strand breaks. Those are the SNPs. And then there was another study that was done in a young population, and it showed a 44% reduction in DNA strand breakage. And then that was done at the University of Florida, that study. Elderly smokers, there was a 2/3 or a 66% reduction in SNPs or in DNA damage, and a 66% improvement in healing these SNPs. So another study that was done down in Australia, and that was published, I think, in 2017. It's been 3 or 4 years. They evaluated over 1,600 genes involved in the inflammatory pathways, and the role that Juice Plus played in protecting genes, turning them on or expressing them. It's called upregulation. 1,146 of these genes were turned on that protects us, and 486 of the non-beneficial genes were downregulated or turned off. So again, these are 4 of the studies that Juice Plus has done evaluating DNA and gene expression. So here's where we're going with all of this, though. One more time, this is what we should be eating every day. 87.5% of your plate every meal 3 times a day should be plant food. 87.5%. Fruits, vegetables, berries, whole grains, and plant protein. So we're not doing it, but this is why we should be doing it, because of fiber, antioxidants, phytonutrients. These foods are a great source of water, and it's called structured water. These foods are convenient, available, they're affordable. There are thousands of options of these foods, these plant foods. In fact, you can grow your own, think Tower Garden, and all of these carry no risk. You don't really see the government telling us to eat more fat or eat more protein. They're constantly telling us, though, to eat more complex carbs, especially fruits and vegetables and berries. And that's our message. So how many, but how many do, and who does? So again, current recommendations, not only for pregnancy, but to achieve optimal health, call for 12 to 15 servings per day of plant sources, fruits, vegetables, and all of that, and that are nutrition dense and fiber dense. So these are the minimums. So, but this will reduce the risk of all chronic disease, not just preventable pregnancy complications. So, take home points. Whole plant food. They're essential for achieving optimal health and reducing risk for all chronic disease. They provide the phytonutrient antioxidants to reduce free radical damage and oxidative stress and chronic inflammation. These whole foods are a critical source of prebiotic fiber to feed beneficial bacteria. They give us an excellent source of structured water. They are the primary source of methyl groups, and they influence which genes, protective or destructive, are turned on or turned off, upregulated, downregulated, expressed, or activated. So, achieving optimal health, a simple solution: daily consumption of 8 to 10 cups or 16 to 20 servings of raw whole food. That's what's recommended. So if you do not, will not, or cannot do this, you might consider what we call the solution. That was the password for getting on this call tonight. Thank you, Jake, and thank you, Susie. And that's the next best thing. It's not better than eating these foods, but it's the next best thing. And off the record, I would almost say it's even better than eating the real thing, because it is so concentrated, it's so easy and so convenient. So we were going to try to leave some time for questions. I'm sorry this took a little longer than I planned, but this is a thorough PowerPoint for what Juice Plus can do for you while you're pregnant, nursing, or considering becoming pregnant. So anyway, thank you for allowing me to have the floor tonight, Susie and Jake.
Wonderful. Do you want to unshare your screen?
If you would like.
I'll go ahead. If you're good with having a few minutes of questions in case people have questions. But wow, that was fascinating. You hit a lot of the hot topics that are out there right now. So we'll just give you a round of applause, Dr. Odom. Appreciate you putting all of that together.
Sure.
I know we originally looked at you wanted to come on and just answer questions. So if there are people on the line that have questions around fertility, pregnancy, babies, your general health, go ahead and just unmute yourself and we'll let you ask Dr. Odom a question, and then I'll bill you for it and you can pay me, okay?